I call Jan Logie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Green Party strongly opposes this immigration amendment bill. And I'd like to thank my Labour colleague Andrew Little for such a clear exposition of how this bill will work in practice once passed. And I want to start by the speech against this appalling, unnecessary and divisive piece of legislation by again reminding this House about why we have signed up to the Refugee Convention. In 1944, and the Minister mentioned this today at the World Refugee Day celebrations, in 1944, prior to signing the Convention, New Zealand took in over 800 or 700 refugees and supporters, and about 100 supporters from Poland, all in 1 year, at one time. And that was at a time when our economy was just a fraction of what it is now, and our population was well less than half what it is now. True, we didn't do it that well. We put those people in a camp. That was because back then, decades ago, we hadn't had the international experience that we now have the benefit of to realise the harm that that kind of approach takes. But as a consequence of taking in those refugees at that time, as a society, we've seen the benefits of their contribution to our society. We've had a chance to reflect on what it means to participate in this world and be a responsible global citizen. And ever since that time, we've been a strong advocate for the Refugee Convention and supported it in this country. Yet, sadly, through the process of this debate, the government members and others in this House have started using provocative language such as economic opportunists, queue jumpers, illegal refugees, in reference to this bill and the people that it refers to. And I want it on record in this House that those terms have no place in a compassionate or indeed an informed society. That is not what this bill is referring to. And a common misperception, which my colleague possibly believes in, about refugee protection is that applying for resettlement overseas is the proper channel for seeking protection. In fact, resettlement of refugees in third countries is the exception rather than the rule. In general, resettlement is only used as a solution for refugees in cases where it's not possible for them to return home or establish permanent residence where they've found asylum. In 2009, as an example, less than 1% of the world's refugees were resettled through that process. That is not the norm. Refugee flows are primarily affected by war, unrest, violence and human rights abuses. Most people do not wish to leave their homes, families, friends and everything they know and hold dear. They do so as a last resort to escape persecution and find safety and security for themselves and their families. For many refugees, the search for protection doesn't end once they've escaped their country of origin. And that's particularly true in this area of the world that we live in. Most countries in the Asia and Pacific region are not signatories to the Refugee Convention. And when people seek or enter or leave their country into those countries, they're often treated the same way as illegal migrants. And that means that they're typically unable to work, own or rent property, access healthcare, send their children to school, and they frequently face violence, harassment, exploitation and abuse and are at risk of being detained and forcibly returned to their country of origin. These conditions are what drive asylum seekers and refugees to seek protection elsewhere. That is the source of people seeking asylum in this country. And I really want to remind this House again that we're not doing our fair share globally. We get about 300 asylum seekers a year, And we need to put that in a global context. Pakistan and Iran, hardly rich countries, in 2010 took in 2.7 million asylum seekers. 300 is how many we take, and we are looking at putting limitations and saying we couldn't possibly cope. Our systems could not cope with 30 plus people. And the original description of this bill was 10, that somehow we would have to send them to a camp and put them into mass detention and limit their rights. Because as a country, as an advanced country, we could not cope with processing 30 people. That is plainly ridiculous. Until now, we've had political consensus in this country on the importance of the Convention. Until now, we've committed to doing our bit in the world, recognising how lucky we are in this country, and recognising that really we can't take in our fair share of people, so we will take an active role internationally in advocating for the Convention and advocating against those who breach it. We've prided ourselves as a country and as a parliament as being different from Australia. We've challenged Australia on their breaches of the Convention. Everyone I know has looked at what's been happening in Australia with their mass hysteria around boat people, and then the awful suicides and the conditions in the detention camps, let alone the dodgy offshore processing tent camps and malaria zones. And in the words of Tracy Barnett, they and I have thought we're better than that. And I still resolutely believe we are better than that. But this government has stopped criticising the Australian government for their breaches of the Convention. This government has undermined our commitment to the Convention and has aligned us with those that we have long and for good reason critiqued. John Key has said that we'll take people from their camps out of our refugee quota, and has even suggested that in return we might send people to those camps if we had a mass arrival here. Gone is the critique, gone is the sense that we are better than that. We've been told that this bill will improve efficiency and act as a deterrent against people smuggling. Well, tell me, truthfully, how? Enabling courts to detain groups of 30 or more people, adding another layer of bureaucracy by reviewing refugee status decisions after 3 years, and limiting family reunification to immediate family for those claiming refugee status after a mass arrival, suspending processing of all refugee and protection claims by regulation without parliamentary oversight, and removing rights for claims to be heard at the Immigration Protection Tribunal will improve the efficiency of our system or do anything to protect or stop people smuggling. We believe this bill is unnecessary, that it will not achieve its stated purposes and will breach human rights obligations. It jeopardises our international reputation as a world leader in this area and hinders progress towards a genuine regional solution. But the saddest thing for me about this bill is that it breaks our political consensus on the Convention, undermines the safety and security of people with a refugee background in this country who now feel judged. It tarnishes our global reputation and will certainly compromise our long-held role of being a bridge between developed countries and developing countries at international meetings. But fundamentally, it shows a lack of empathy and humanity that makes me despair, because I know we are better than this.
I call Mike Sabin.
The trouble with the member who's just resumed